Hi everyone, I'm Miss Amy with the Norcross Library, and this is Junior Scientists. We will be conducting STEAM experiments every second and fourth Tuesday of each month. This will be a great way to learn STEAM-related facts while having fun learning how to conduct experiments at home. But remember to always ask your parents' permission before you do any of the experiments or projects. Now, let's get started. This week, we will be growing our own crystals. But what are crystals? Crystals are organized groups of atoms or molecules. Crystals form when a liquid cools very slowly, or when water evaporates from a chemical mixture, leaving behind the molecules that reform into new geometric shapes, such as crystals. All crystals have different properties and shapes. Sugar crystals are oblong and slanted at the ends, and salt crystals are cubic in shape. The materials that you will need to make our crystals are going to be 1 to 2 pipe cleaners. You're going to make a shape atom, hang into the jars. You're going to need 2 or 3 glass jars, depending how many you're going to be making. You're going to need 3 cups of Epsom salts, 2 cups of very hot water, a pencil, a wooden skewer, an optional food coloring, and a magnifying glass. And then you will need an empty bowl and something to stir it with. Today, we will be making crystals out of Epsom salt. Epsom salt is another name for magnesium sulfate. And if you have a magnifying glass, it's a great idea to take a look at what the salt looks like underneath the magnifying glass. In this experiment, we will be dissolving Epsom salt into very hot water. So I have my 3 cups of Epsom salts, and I'm going to add my 2 cups of very hot water. The temperature of the water determines how much Epsom salt or magnesium sulfate it can hold. It will dissolve more when the water is hotter. This creates what scientists call a supersaturated solution that holds much more dissolved salt than it normally would at room temperature. As the solution cools, some of the salt molecules will stick to our pipe cleaners, and other salt molecules will attach to those molecules, repeating the pattern forming the crystal. Cooling the solution rapidly encourages fast crystal growth, since there is less room for the dissolved salt in the cooler, denser solution. Crystals grown this way will be small, thin, and numerous. And if left undisturbed, the crystals should last months or more. So now we're just going to continue to slowly stir our Epsom salts into our water until it is completely dissolved. Take your time and stir carefully. You want to make sure you don't spill, since it is hot water that you're working with. It may take 2 to 3 minutes of gently stirring until all of the salt has been dissolved. Now that our supersaturated solution of Epsom salt and water is pretty much completely dissolved, I'm going to put it in 2 different glass jars. I happen to have a funnel. If you have one at home, feel free to use it. If not, just be very careful when pouring your liquid into your jars. Make sure you have an adult's help, because remember, the water is still a little bit warm. So I'm going to pour about half into one. And I'm going to pour the other half into the other jar. So now we have 2 jars with our supersaturated solution. Now, optional is to add some food coloring, which I'm going to do. Just going to add a little bit of red into each. I'm going to mix it up. Now I'm using gel versus the liquid food coloring, so it might take me a little bit longer to dissolve it, but once it dissolves, it should be a light red or pink color. Now, I want to see if there's a big difference when cooled faster and colder than allowing to cool naturally to room temperature. So I had made 2 jars, and you can feel free to try this experiment in different ways as well. You can try putting it in the freezer, in the refrigerator, leaving it out at room temperature, and leaving it out for several days. So I will be putting one in the refrigerator for 24 hours, and I will be putting one on the countertop at room temperature for 24 hours. So the next step is to take your pipe cleaners. So I have used 2 on this one, a pink and a purple, and I just made different shape, and I'm gonna stick it in, and it's tied around a mechanical pencil, which is basically just holding it on the top so it doesn't fall in. So this is what's going to allow the crystals to form. They're gonna form onto our pipe cleaner. And then I have my second one that I've tied on, and I made kind of like heart shapes. So I'm gonna put this one in the second jar and have it hang out like that. So one is gonna go in the freezer for in the refrigerator for 24 hours, and the other one is gonna stay on the countertop. And then 24 hours later, we're gonna come back and see what has happened and if there's any difference in crystal growth.
Okay, it's been 24 hours later, and I realized that my refrigerator may have been a bit too cold because the one I had put in the refrigerator kind of froze. So this is exactly what happens when you do experiments. You never know what will happen, what your outcome will be. So I'm glad I did 2. So this is the one that I had on the countertop, room temperature. Let's go ahead and take a look and see our crystals. Whoa, look at all those crystals. We had a lot of crystal growth on the room temperature one. That is fantastic. So they all grew on the pipe cleaner because that's what they needed. They needed something to grow on. So that's what they grew on, was that. So if you do have a magnifying glass, you can always try to see what it looks like really up close. Oh, and be careful, they are very fragile, as you can just see. Some of them came off. So be very careful. So that was the one we had on room temperature. And here's the one that I had in the refrigerator. Now it kind of froze, so I can't really pull it out easily since everything is frozen, but you can still see some of the crystal growth on the pipe cleaner. So I would say this one was a fail just because we can't get much of a product of our crystals coming off as we did on the room temperature one. So, but this was really great. So this is a very fun and easy experiment for you to try at home. And it's really fun. And here's one little crystal that fell off. As you can see, it looks like through the magnifying glass. So this is a great way for you to explore what happens when you have a supersaturated solution, such as Epsom salts dissolved in water, and then you put in a foreign object, such as your pipe cleaners, and you see how you make your own homemade crystals. Enjoy and have fun with this one. See you next time. Goodbye.